to say. Life's a tune today, Brentocast all the way.
And we're back for episode 62 of Brentocast. It is September 9th already. Imagine that. The first little hints of fall have crept into our weather, and days are generally much more pleasant now, topping out around 77 degrees, 80 degrees maybe on some days, but generally speaking, very pleasant weather right now. Seems like we've got through the really hot part of the summer, and that's just been amazing. I wanted to address a little change up to the Brentocast, and that is that I'm basically doing it with my audio diary app, because this allows me to have a transcription, and also I can export the audio file from here, so it's just fine to use that for the main discussion portion of a Brentocast episode. That said, just speaking just for me, the format has been a little bit boring. I mean, obviously, I realize I don't have any real listeners or regular listeners, and so I try to think of ways that I can make it just a little bit more interesting, other than my listening to it for playback or whatever. But I've come up with a new format that's kind of opened itself up to me because of this really cool app, Audio Diary, that I'm actually using right now to record this. I record my daily diary via this Audio Diary app. And at the end of the month or the end of the week or whatever I choose, I can export it and download it onto my desktop. And then I have access to a transcript. I have access to the actual audio files themselves, and also the photos that I include for the day. Like, for example, today I'm sitting here in front of the boat launch underneath a large tree and in the shade, watching a canoer paddle out across Baden Lake. And it's beautiful and very mellow down here, temperature-wise, very moderate. Just rolled the window down, for example. So I can take a photo of that vista that I'm talking about and send it along with this. And should I ever want to post this on my website, have a particular blog or vlog or audio podcast that I want to translate into an article for the website, very easy to do now. And then giving it even more thought of how I could use those files once they got to my hard drive or my Dropbox or what have you. And I came up with the idea of creating a narrative story of, I'll use like ChatGPT or Grok or something like that to create a narrative story based on the PDF, which combines all of my entries for, let's say we do it for a month. And that works out to something like a 4 to 6 minute narrative story about what I did for the month. And to me, that's a little more interesting than listening to myself talk, especially if I put some sort of cool voice on it. For example, we're going to start this today, and this month's host will be covering a handful of eventful days in August of this year where, we lost some folks we knew, and some drama went down with mom, and then we had some good things happen too. And it was just really an eventful, as far as the diary goes, it was really an eventful month. And I got into a lot of stuff, and having that third person narrative story of it sounds really cool. And by a pure happenstance, I landed on a voice that sounded a whole lot like the late, great John Hurt, very famous English actor. And I think I will be able to reproduce that voice for at least 1 month, because basically I'm probably going to be trimming down some of my AI subscriptions, and Kit's AI, which is one of the pieces that I use to get that effect, is one of the ones that's going to go. But at least we'll have this first story and perhaps the next one. And just let me know if you actually happen to listen to this, and let me know what you think of the idea of the narrative story to sort of round out the podcast. I'll still talk at the beginning of it. I'll still have my theme song, and then I'll just end it off with the narrative story, and that'll be sort of the end of it. And I don't know that they need to be 20 minutes long. I might be able to shorten it up. If the narrative story works out to about 5 minutes, and then I talk for 5 to 10 minutes, that's probably enough. I don't know that it needs to be any longer, but The really big eventful thing that's happening here at the very end of August and the first part of September is that I have a new band. The guys that were my old band, or not really a band, but like
A week in the life of Brent Bowers. Brent Bowers woke up early on Wednesday, August 14th, to the familiar sound of his granddaughter Delilah's laughter echoing through the house. The day was warm, and after a quick breakfast, Brent geared up for another bustling afternoon with the rambunctious 5-year-old. Lately, Delilah had been a little more wild than usual, a shift Brent noticed ever since she started kindergarten. Still, as chaotic as it was, spending time with her always brought a sense of joy and fulfillment. Today wasn't a typical Wednesday. Normally, Brent had Delilah on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, but because her mother, Summer, had celebrated her birthday earlier in the week, Brent and his wife Nancy had her for an extra night. Although Brent cherished the time, he couldn't ignore the exhaustion that came with it. After school, he dropped her off at Star Kids for a couple of hours to get some breathing room before the evening routine. Nancy wasn't much help when it came to looking after Delilah. Despite Brent's efforts, it often felt like he carried the weight of the family alone, especially when Nancy would retreat upstairs for long baths or volunteer him for extra tasks, such as keeping Delilah for an additional day so Summer could have more time off. "We'll keep her," Nancy would say, but Brent couldn't help but think, what is this we? It was always him. That evening, as Delilah settled down, Brent found some quiet moments to reflect on his life. He had dreams, creative goals that were increasingly hard to find time for. Between taking care of the family, running errands, and working as a massage therapist at their business, his time for himself dwindled. Music was his escape. He had been working on several albums and even experimenting with AI-generated music, a passion project he hoped to release in time for Halloween. But life didn't slow down. The next day, August 15th, brought with it sorrow. Brent received the news that Dr. Bridge, his chiropractor and a close friend, had passed away. The loss hit him harder than expected, and though they hadn't been best friends, there was a shared bond that made Brent feel the void. It was a somber day, marked by the frustrations of interrupted sleep from barking dogs and the weight of mortality pressing down on his heart. Brent tried to distract himself with 3D printing projects and his music, but the loss lingered in the background. By the time Friday rolled around, Brent was still reeling from Dr. Bridges' passing when his mother's health took a sudden downturn. She had torn her esophagus, and Brent found himself once again caught between caring for his family and managing the growing emotional burden of seeing his mother slowly decline. Her time in the nursing home weighed heavily on him, the place depressed him, and the worry about her medical bills and whether Medicaid would cover her care added stress to an already fraught situation. Amid the sorrow, however, there were moments of joy. Brent had recently 3D printed a little cat for Delilah, which she named Flusher. Watching her excitement as she played with the figurine provided a small but meaningful reprieve. The weekend arrived with a mix of relief and new challenges. On Saturday, Brent accompanied Nancy on an early morning trip to Marshfield to check out a camper she was excited to buy. Nancy had big dreams of converting it into a coffee shop, but Brent had his doubts. Sure enough, his instincts were right. The camper was in terrible shape, a scam waiting to happen. Disappointed but not surprised, the couple headed back and found solace in a charming breakfast spot, Miss Ella's, where they enjoyed a rare moment of peace. That evening, Brent allowed himself some time to unwind. He had been eagerly awaiting the release of Alien Romulus, and after everything that had happened, he was ready for an escape into the familiar world of science fiction. The movie didn't disappoint. It was a return to good storytelling, devoid of the modern-day woke messaging that had ruined so many films for him. For those few hours in the theater, Brent could forget the week's stress and immerse himself in something he loved. But by Monday, life was back in full swing. Brent spent time working with new clients at his massage practice, feeling optimistic about the uptick in business. He visited his mom, who was in and out of sleep, and despite her failing health, he remained committed to being there for her. That night, though, his frustrations returned. Nancy snapped at him over trivial things, and despite his best efforts to make her happy, nothing seemed to work. Tuesday offered a bit of respite. Brent took a much-needed walk up the Sugarloaf Trail at Morrow Mountain. The quiet hike provided clarity and peace, a reminder that even amid the chaos of life, there were moments of calm and control. With the trail behind him, Brent returned home determined to finalize the setlist for his upcoming show at Loafers, focusing on his music as a way to keep moving forward. By the end of the week, Brent reflected on the delicate balance of life, family, loss, ambition, and the small victories that kept him going. Despite the challenges and frustrations, Brent found solace in his music, his time with Delilah, and the quiet moments that gave him a reason to keep pushing forward. This story weaves together Brent's reflections on family life, personal losses, creative aspirations, and the challenges he faced in balancing his responsibilities with his goals during a few eventful days in August 2024.